Hello everyone, today I will be talking about the books that I read in December. First up I read Far from the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy. I picked this one partly because of the cover. The snowy painting felt kind of Christmassy to me, and it always feels kind of appropriate to read a classic around Christmas time for some reason. This is my first Thomas Hardy that I've read in full. I remember as a teenager trying to read Tess of the D'Urbervilles and not being able to finish it. I think I partly struggled with the writing style and also the fact that that book is incredibly miserable. And this one definitely took me a while to get into. This book is about a woman called Bathsheba Everdeen. At the beginning of the story, she is helping out with her aunt on a farm in the country, and she makes friends with a shepherd called Gabriel Oak. But then an uncle of hers dies. His is the farm where she grew up, and she inherits that farm, and so at a very young age becomes the mistress of this massive farm and a bunch of labourers who work there. I really enjoyed the first part of the book when Bathsheba is first introduced. I thought that was just amazingly written, and the way that Thomas Hardy describes characters really gives you a complete understanding of each character. His writing is definitely something that I had to get used to. He kind of orders words in a different way from anything I've ever read before, but once I got used to it, I found him to be very specific in the way that he describes things, which makes it really easy to visualize the world of this book. After that first few chapters, I did find it slow down a bit, and I found it quite hard to get into. I think this was partly because over December and leading up to Christmas was really busy. I didn't get the opportunity to read more than a few chapters at a time, and I think it takes a couple of chapters to get into the flow and to start really reading it properly. But I did get to do that by the end of the book, and I think the plot of the book really picks up as well by the end. It is mainly a character study of Bathsheba Everdeen and her three suitors, which include Gabriel Oak, Mr. Baldwood, who is a farmer who lives next door, and a soldier called Troy. Bathsheba's a really interesting character because she's definitely heralded as sort of not of her time, a much more independent and outspoken and well-rounded female character than is often found in 1800s books. I found her really interesting because while all those things are true, she's actually very emotionally driven, and a lot of her decisions are based on how she has an immense desire to be liked by particularly the three men around her. And I feel like if I met her in real life, I would find her quite annoying, because I find people who covet the approval of other people above most other things really annoying. The way that Hardy writes about her, you feel like he has a very modern view of her, in that she's simply a young woman who wants to have fun, who wants to date men, and there's nothing intrinsically wrong with that at all. It's just unfortunate that she happens to live in a society where she can't do that. If she wants to be with a man, she basically has to marry him, and that is where all the trouble springs from. There are parts in here that made me feel that Thomas Hardy understood the way that women feel in a patriarchal society much better than a lot of men these days do. There's a part where Mr. Baldwood is pressuring Bathsheba into promising to marry him in several years' time because she almost promised to marry him previously and then didn't, and Hardy describes the way that Bathsheba feels afraid of him at that time, even though she sees him as a friend. But it is that intrinsic fear that women feel when they are around men who are pressuring them and won't leave them alone, and the underlying fear we always have that they could become violent and could easily overpower us because of being physically stronger than us. And that kind of blew me away a little bit, that Thomas Hardy in 1874 just got that. And yeah, there are some other little touches through the book as well. I'm glad this was my first Hardy, and I'm looking forward to reading more of his books. The second book I read in December was Stroll by Colin Thiele. This is a classic Australian kids book. It's the tiniest little book, kind of a picture book, but not really. It has illustrations in the middle of the book, but not all the way throughout as in a traditional picture book. And it's about a boy nicknamed Stormboy living with his father on the coast in South Australia. They live next door to a nature reserve, and so Stormboy grows up amongst all the animals that live down there, and he becomes particular friends with a pelican. And it is a very short and very sad story about how humans tend to destroy everything around them and how the environment and other animals suffer because of it. This book is particularly well known in Australia because of its film adaptation from the 70s, I think it was, and I read this because there is a new adaptation coming out this year, which I will be writing something for work. So I read the book first, and then I will watch the the 70s film before I watched the new one as well. It absolutely made me cry at the end. I don't generally cry in books even if they are sad. I think the last time I shed a tear at a book was for The Book Thief. I'm a big crier in movies, but it's a lot easier for movies to really trigger emotions, I think, with the way they can manipulate music and visuals and everything else going on. So the ability for words themselves to move me to tears is very rare, but I absolutely sobbed on the morning that I read this, which was unexpected. The last book I read in December was actually one I got for Christmas, and this is Christmas Pudding by Nancy Mitford. This is one of the books I asked my mum to get for me when we were in Melbourne. I saw it on the shelf, and I've read Nancy Mitford's most famous novels, The Pursuit of Love and Love in a Cold Climate, before, and I saw them on the shelves alongside this one with just the most beautiful covers. I'm just obsessed with this cover. It has glittery gold stars on it and then such nice colours that are Christmassy but also not over the top, and now I kind of want to collect all of her books in these covers. Because this is a Christmas themed book, I said to my mum this would make such a great Christmas present. Hint hint. She didn't take the hint, so I basically asked her to get it for me and wrap it up for me and put it under the tree, and I'm very glad I did that because it was a really enjoyable read and perfect for Christmas as well. Nancy Mitford is a British writer who wrote around the 1930s and 40s mainly, and her writing exudes Britishness from that era. It's also incredibly funny. I was laughing out loud at so many parts and lines of this book. This just has this dry sarcastic wit that is impossible not to laugh at. The book is kind of about a lot of different characters who all end up going to spend Christmas either in this big hall owned by a posh rich family in the country or staying nearby with another one of the characters. And the main character is kind of this guy called Paul who recently published his first novel. He intended it to be a tragedy and it has got rave reviews for being the funniest book written in a long time, and he is absolutely distraught. Even though his book is selling so well, he's getting all these great reviews, but he is just devastated that no one understood the tragedy of the story that he'd written. The story itself is kind of silly and gets a little bit repetitive by the end, and eventually the characters do kind of get a bit annoying because none of them are completely sympathetic or likable, but because it's such a short book and a really easy read, none of that really matters. So that was all the books I read in December. Please let me know if you've read any of them and your thoughts on them. I'm very glad I ended the year with 3 really good reads, and I already have such a long list of books to get to this year, so I should probably stop this video and start reading those. I hope you have a great day and I will see you soon. Bye!